Hello everybody, I'm Ebot17, and today we're going to talk about the massive amount of reveals that were shown off at New York Toy Fair 2018. I'm going to start off with a specific order. I'm going to go the new Cyberverse series of toys, I'm going to go Power of the Primes, and then Studio series. I'm not going to cover Rescue Bots in this video because it doesn't interest me. And so first up we have Cyberverse. I don't really care that much about the Cyberverse figures, so I'm not going to talk too much about them. The first up we have is the Scout class, which are basically, from the looks of it and what we've seen at Toy Fair and by the pictures, it seems like the robot modes have some sort of battle attack gimmick with them. Apparently this entire line of toys has a battle attack gimmick that is somehow part of the transformation. It's like the end of the transformation or something. So first up we have his Bumblebee with some sword swinging weapon. The same as could go for Megatron. This is like a Energon mace. GRIMLOCK has a biting gimmick, and STARSCREAM has flip out null rays. Overall, I don't think these guys look too great. It's just very gimmicky, and it doesn't really appeal to me. Next up we have is Warrior class figures, which are kind of like deluxe class. We have Bumblebee, Optimus, Decepticon Shockwave, and Starscream. Starscream looks he's very simplified, very minimal paint. He just doesn't look too good to me. His jet mode seems it's just weird. Like the wings are way too far back and they look way too far up as well. I feel like the gimmicks in this line is gonna really cripple the figures overall. Bumblebee, again, he's very chunky. His legs are super simple, very minimal paint. He has barely any posability in the arms, no wrist rotation, no nothing. Maybe an elbow movement and some shoulder rotation, and he has this like spinning mace gimmick with him. I don't truly understand it. Whatever, it's fine. Really weird. His face looks really gross, in my opinion. Next up we have his Optimus. His truck mode reminds me a lot of Transformers Animated Optimus. He has this swing out axe gimmick in his arms, but overall the figure is just kind of, again, crippled by the simplicity and the gimmick, I guess. It just doesn't look that good to me. Now Shockwave, up next, is the one that I actually think looks decent. He turns into a crawler tank, almost like something out of Star Wars. The vehicle mode for some reason reminds me a lot of his animated self, and he has this gimmick with his gun where you push a lever and a blast effect comes out. It's interesting, I guess. The robot mode looks good. It's nice and purple. The only downside for me is that it's a deluxe scaled figure. I would much prefer my Shockwave to be about Voyager sized, but that's just my personal opinion. Next up we have is the Ultra class, which is essentially like Voyagers. We have Bumblebee, who has a flip-out gun gimmick. GRIMLOCK, who I actually think looks interesting, except for the Dino mode. The face looks very flat and very squished. His gimmick is that a fire breath, like, effect piece comes out of the mouth. Finally, in the Ultra class, we have Starscream, who I actually kind of like a little bit. He reminds me, and he reminds a lot of other people, of Machine Wars Starscream, just with the giant cannons that are on his shoulders. There's already a Digibash out there. I'm going to put it up on the screen of it, and the Digibash looks pretty good, actually. Starscream gimmick is that in the last stage of the transformation, the little missile pods pop out, and they look like they're kind of spraying missiles. And finally, we have the Ultimate class, which we have Megatron and Optimus. Again, these all have gimmicks with them. Optimus looks okay in my opinion. His gimmick is that his windows open up to reveal, I guess, like the matrix of leadership or his spark, and it's just kind of doing this like spinning feature. I don't truly understand it. I guess it's interesting. It's okay. And finally we have is Megatron, who actually looks pretty neat. I'm just not a big fan of that face. The face just looks really weird. His gimmick is that his cannon, when activated, these flaps around the side flip forward to look like they're blasting like purple energy, which is, I guess, interesting and neat. So yeah. I'm sorry, I can't find any real excitement in these figures. They just kind of look wrong to me. They just don't look right. And if this is what the Cyberverse toy line is really offering, then I don't know if I have full confidence in the series. Up next is Power of the Primes, which for the most part we saw figures we already, have seen before. No real surprises in it. We just got to see the figures that we knew about before. No real super surprising things about it. So first up is the Prime Masters. We got 3 new Prime Masters. We got Octopunch with Soulless Prime, Megatronus with Bomb Burst, and Quintus Prime with Bludgeon. Now, I got some of the Prime Masters. I think I got all of the Wave 1 Prime Masters, and overall I'm not too impressed with them. Like, the Micronus Prime one is just kind of meh. Skullgrin has a very nice design. I do like the design. And my favorite has to be Metal Hawk right now. I think I do like the bestial monster pretenders more than the ones that actually look like robots. So I'll probably end up getting, you know, Bomb Burst and Megatronus and Octopunch with Solus Prime, because I just like those monster-ish looking pretender robots. And of course they turn into their weapon modes, which, I don't know, Bomb Burst is literally the same thing as Skullgrin's. Bludgeon's weapon, for some reason, the end of the gun looks like the TARDIS. They're interesting, and if you're a big fan of pretenders, then you'll definitely love these. Now, in the deluxe category, we didn't really get to see anything new. We got one new thing, and that was NOVASTAR, who actually looks really good. Of course, it's a remold of the Moonracer figure. I think she looks really good. My only issue with the Moonracer NOVASTAR mold is that giant backpack. It just really takes away from the figure. But Moonracer's head sculpt and weapon are so cool. I just really like the reds and the red and yellows. It just looks really good. It's pretty nice that we're actually getting to see some of these fembots get figures for the first time. I know these are iterations of these characters that we've been wanting for a while. Now in the Voyagers, we didn't really get to see much more. We got to see a little bit more of Alita 1. We sadly didn't get to see any of Inferno, even though the box art is practically already out for Inferno, so we know exactly what he's going to look like. Now in the leader class category, we got to see a full color prototype of the Evolution Optimus Primal, or Optimal Optimus. My overall thoughts on it is I think it's cool. The only downside is like some of the color placements is pretty weird, like his unpainted chest. It's just completely gray. It's not orange at all, which I think I can live with that. He doesn't have a tank mode. I think it's obvious to say that he doesn't have a tank mode because there are no wheels on the side of his legs like the original toy. Now, we didn't get to see what the jet mode looks like. I think we saw images like back when it was still just a gray model prototype, but we didn't get to see any here. It has its gorilla mode and it has the Optimus Primal that goes within it. And I think that the Optimus Primal is the downside of the entire figure. He doesn't really fit the evolution gimmick as much as, say, Rodimus Prime or Optimus with Orion Pax, or for God's sakes, even Starsaber. Now, the Optimus Primal figure looks really good in robot mode. I will give it that. Even though it has a big backpack, which is practically just the cockpit of the rest of the leader class figure, but the only downside is it has no gorilla mode. So it's not really Optimus Primal. It's not Optimus Primal if it doesn't turn into a gorilla. I don't really understand where their thought process was in this one. Like, I guess you could say this is his Cybertronian form, but I just don't see it. Like, I guess you could say this is his, like, Cybertronian alt mode, but it doesn't feel like a good Optimus Primal. I'm kind of disappointed with this. Now, the overall Optimal Optimus, I think, looks cool. For one thing, I'm happy you can actually detach the guns from the chest in the overall combined form, because that's the one thing I do not like about the original Optimal Optimus Beast Wars toy, is the fact that the guns do not pop off or fold down or anything. They're just these giant guns that hang off. One thing I want to note is the massive amount of kibble that Optimus Primal forms to make this like backpack of Optimal Optimus. You can practically completely tell that that's Optimus Primal. They didn't even try to hide it. There was nothing that they did to try to hide it. I do like it. I'm a big fan of Beast Wars. I'm probably gonna end up buying it anyway. Probably not an immediate buy for me. Now, before we get to the big thing, which is Predaking, I want to show off some pictures of the Abominus combined mode, and I think my predictions were kind of right. My first thought was that the body was going to seem much smaller in comparison to the limbs, because all of the limb bots are very bulky, they're very big, the legs are very chunky, the arms are very big, and the body seems very slim. Surprisingly, people seem to like it, and I like it. I think it looks good. I seriously think those feet just don't work. Hasbro tried to make individual feet to try to get them to work, but they're just not wide enough. But overall, I think the combined mode for Abominus looks really, really good. Now, the final thing for Power of the Primes to talk about is the Titan class Predaking. This stands at about 18 inches tall and will range at about $150 to $175 at retail. Now, his combined mode consists of 5 Voyager Predacons, and he houses a Matrix of Leadership which holds Onyx Prime. Maybe it's not a Matrix of Leadership, maybe it's a Beast Matrix, a Feral Matrix, whatever you call it. It's an optional thing that you have. Now, one good thing to note about these 5 Voyager Predacons is that they all have elbow and knee joints. Thank goodness. It was so disappointing that both Scrapper and Longhaul didn't have elbow joints. I thought that was kind of dumb. Something really important to note about this Predaking is where it combines, like where are the joints that combine the individual robots. When I initially saw this, I thought, oh, the leg components are going to combine at the knee, and the arm components are going to combine at the shoulder. However, the leg components actually combine at the waist, so the entire thigh is part of the leg bots. So Torox and Headstrong literally have giant thighs hanging off their back, which, you know, people could complain that yes, that's very bad, it's maybe poor engineering, but I think it's fine. I think for what we're getting in the overall combine mode, I don't think many people are going to take Predaking out of combine mode, so this is fine. This is fine for me. I never take Devastator out of combine mode, and I think we've gotten worse before. I don't think it's terrible personally. One thing I really like about this figure is that he has individual feet that attach separately. They have an ankle hinge, they're large, they're sturdy, they look good. They're not following, you know, what the rest of the combiners are, where they feature some of those really thin legs and really weird arms that just, they don't look right and they barely hold up the combiner. One thing I forgot to note about the limb bots is that they also have large black masses hanging off their backs, just like the leg components, and they combine kind of with the chest. I feel like this could have been fixed and this could have been changed if Razor Claw was a later class figure rather than a Voyager, but overall I think Predaking looks astonishing. I think he looks really cool and I can't wait to get him. And I like the look of the individual robots. I think they're really good. They're nice, they're big, they're chunky, they're very like G1 styled with how bulky they are. Now, moving away from Power of the Primes, we're going to talk about the Studio Series, which is like the new, I guess, movie anniversary line. First up we have with the Studio Series are the deluxe class figures. We have Bumblebee, who turns into his 74 Camaro from the first movie, which is my favorite form that Bumblebee has ever taken. It is somewhat of a remold of the deluxe Last Night Bumblebee. So an update on this figure, I had ordered it from Hasbro Toy Shop, and not 3 days later it came in the mail. I got it, I opened it up, and started messing with it. And overall, the look of Bumblebee in both robot and vehicle mode looks really good, but his design is very poor. Yes, he is small, but you gotta remember this is Bumblebee. Both Bumblebee and Stinger are both very small figures, so the size isn't what bothers me. It's the quality of the plastic and the fact that many of the parts are friction hinged in and not pinned in. If you go to almost any old Bumblebee figure, heck, even Age of Extinction, like the back flaps were pinned in. The hinges, they were pinned in. In this one, they're friction hinged in, and they fall apart immediately. I do not like that. However, I will say that the look in both vehicle and robot mode are really good, and the size is forgivable because it is Bumblebee, and Bumblebee is a small character. Next up is Stinger. All the rendered images and all the official images that were shown don't really give the figure justice. There are some really good pictures of him, but there's already like professional photography images of him, of all these figures, and they show off the scale of them all. His chest looks like it kind of pulls open and kind of inverts on itself when going into car mode. When you think about the car mode and how they went to robot mode and how good the robot mode looks, I think this is a really good looking figure. Up next, what we have is the deluxe Crowbar, who seems to borrow elements and is somewhat of a remold of the Last Night Berserker figure. His vehicle mode looks exactly like Berserker's. The one thing with the crankcase figure and probably Berserker is with their dreads, just trying to maneuver their dreads around to where you can actually transform the figure is always hard, and I hope that this doesn't make it too difficult to transform it, because it's really frustrating when you're trying to move the dreads around all the parts to get it to vehicle mode. I think it's gonna be cool for the people who wanted dread figures since Dark of the Moon, and they're finally getting it. What, almost 3 movies later? Now, next up is Jazz, who I think looks really good. He looks so good. You know, he's not as big and chunky and has weird, awkward arms like the first movie Jazz. And he comes with his gun. It's almost like a deluxe version of the Human Alliance Jazz. And it looks really good. It looks really movie accurate. And I really like it. And that's all I gotta say about it. I really like it. Now, next up is Lockdown. Lockdown is cool. He's a little bit bigger than the rest of the deluxes. He seems to borrow some engineering elements from, I guess, Cogman. You can really see that in his arms. Now, of course, he comes with his little claw. He also seems to come with a knife. I don't know if he's going to come with his head cannon. It doesn't seem like he will. I don't see a slot in the top of his head where that head cannon can go. Maybe there's something there that you can do. It does does almost seem like he has a flip down visor by what is on the top of his head. His Lamborghini mode is a lot bigger than the rest of the cars, which I think seems fitting. The Lamborghini is a pretty big car. Next up is Ratchet, who apparently, from what I've read, seems to be a slightly upscaled version of the Dark of the Moon Ratchet. That way he scales better with all of the other figures. Not much to say about this Ratchet other than he comes with a saw blade, a new saw blade. Now moving on to Voyagers, we have is Optimus Prime, who I guess looks okay. He, as of all these figures, he borrows elements from another figure, and he seems to borrow elements from Evasion mode Optimus Prime. You can definitely see that in vehicle mode from where his feet are. I think this Optimus looks really good. It's maybe not the best Voyager movie Optimus we've ever gotten, but it's pretty good. Now after that is a Voyager Starscream. It either borrows elements or it is literally an upscale of the Dark of the Moon Starscream. It seems that maybe he has some slight molding changes in the chest or whatnot, but for the most part it is an upscaled version of that Dark of the Moon Deluxe Starscream. And I think it's really good. I think it's a very well scaled Starscream. Not to mention, this is a Voyager figure and it's so much bigger than the Voyager Optimus. Like there's an image showing the scale of all these figures and it is so much bigger than Optimus. Next up in the Voyager class is Decepticon BRAWL. I think it looks pretty good. Overall, I think all these figures look really good. BRAWL looks dope. He has, you know, missiles over his shoulders, on his arms, everywhere. Just, he's suited and ready for murderous death. And I think Voyager class is a great size for him. If not, Leader is a great size for him. And here's another Voyager class figure that I really like is Megatron. Oh my god, the Megatron looks so cool. In robot mode, it's really screen accurate. The tank mode is kind of a mess, but it was in the movie. I really do like the look of this Megatron. Like, here's this image where he shows his diorama. Oh my god. I love the look of this thing. It's almost perfect. I know, I'm sorry if it doesn't sound like I'm giving a formal analysis of all this. I'm just kind of nerding out over this. I never thought I'd be collecting movie figures again, but the look of these figures really makes me want to start collecting them again. And finally, in the Leader class figures, we have a Leader GRIMLOCK, who is massive. Now, I think the figure that was displayed at Toy Fair was painted in a very silver and kind of an ocean green dry brushing all over. And I don't know if that's exactly how it's going to look like when it actually hits stores. I hope it is. Oh, I hope they paint it up this much. Like, there's a close-up image of his face, and you can see the details in the face and the dry brushing and how it's just all set into place very well. The paint is, and it's just absolutely huge. It towers over even Blackout. It's just gigantic. And speaking of Blackout, that is the final figure that we're going to talk about today. Oh my god. Like, you don't understand how hyped I am about this. Like, GRIMLOCK I'm probably not going to end up getting. Even though as much as I like it, I'm probably not going to end up getting it. But Blackout is a 100% buy for me. This is the only figure from this line so far that I am just like, yes, that is worth the money that I am going to put into it. It's big. It looks like it did in the movie. I hope it's solid. And it turns into its helicopter. Like, I'm really hoping that this isn't gonna suck. It even comes with a tiny Scorponok, which is, oh, that's so cool. Like, the original one came with a little Scorponok, and that was dope. Like, before this even came out, I was considering on buying the Zeta Toys Whirlblade and customizing it up. Which, if you don't know, it's a third-party version of Vortex, whose vehicle mode looks exactly like Blackout. The helicopter mode is cool, the robot mode is bulky. The only thing I'd say I don't like about it is his hands. I can't tell what they are. Are they supposed to be like claws? They're like really weirdly positioned, and they don't seem to rotate. They only have a hinge, so it's just like his hands are constantly looking flat. Other than that, it looks really dope. So that's kind of the end of all of the new revealed figures that were shown off at Toy Fair. Apparently at one of the panels, Hasbro revealed what they're going to do after the Prime Wars trilogy ends and after Power of the Primes. So apparently what they said is that after Power of the Primes ends, they will be starting a new trilogy called the War for Cybertron line. I know apparently it has no relation to the video game, but it's called that anyway. I know it's very confusing. Apparently it's going to continue just kind of like Generations. They said that any gimmicks and any engineering that they had featured in the Prime Wars trilogy will still carry over into War for Cybertron. So Headmasters, Prime Masters, Power Masters, Combiners, all that will still carry over into War for Cybertron. It's going to feature more Cybertronian styled versions of characters, possibly Tetrajets is what is said on the forum sites. They're also planning on, for the Studio series, there will be a Toys R Us exclusive Thundercracker, which is apparently going to be a remold of Nitro Zeus. I don't know how that's gonna work out and look good, but if you're excited about that, then I guess get on the hype train. I don't know. So yeah, that is apparently all the news that came out of Toy Fair 2018. I'm pretty excited about it. Some disappointment. Most of it we already knew was going to come out, but pleasantly surprised by most of it. Cyberverse was a big disappointment. Power of the Primes was, oh my god, Predaking looks so good, and the Studio series, blown away by it. So yes, that's the end of the video. Don't forget, you can like this video, comment, and even subscribe, but only if it's your pleasure. I'm about 17, and I will see you later.